Good morning, I'm Raquel the Bell on the one and only WWNN 1470. Today in the studio we have Tracy from We Are the People. You can join her every Monday night from 7 to 7:30 p.m. on her website, wearethepeople.tv. Tracy tackles the student loan dilemma and offers viable options. And now, here's Tracy.
And good morning. It's morning somewhere. There we are. Hi, it's Tracy Marks, and I'm back. And today my guest host is Jeff Van Tresse. You'll remember him from last week with Donald Cleveland. And his show is Legal Talk that airs every Tuesday night from 6 to 6:30. So it's always good to have a legal mind in on these types of things. Now, today, I can't talk today. We have a special guest, Alan Collins. He is the founder of studentloanjustice.org and is well known for his book, The Student Loan Scam, which was published in 2009. He has been on several shows such as 60 Minutes, 2020, The News Hour, CNBC, and many other television programs, as well as had articles about him in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, and many others. So we're very pleased to have you here tonight, Alan. Are you there?
Sure, it's great to be with you both.
Great. So I surprised you with Jeffrey Van Tresse, but he fills in for me usually the first Monday of the month, and he is an attorney with student loan debt, so we wanted to talk to you.
Well, you know, you couldn't have picked a better day, Tracy. It was a busy day in the student loan world. Most notably, Hillary Clinton unveiled her student debt plan for her presidential campaign.
Yes, she did. Now, you're in Washington, right?
That's right.
And you were going to be doing a march as well. Did that go off with the weather the way it was?
Well, you know, that's right. It was raining today, and it looks like more of the same tomorrow, so we're sort of curled up here watching the weather go on outside for the next couple of days. But, you know, it's a good thing because a part of our activism involves unleashing an army of citizen activists on the Internet and, you know, commenting on the flurry of articles that came out today in response to candidate Clinton's plan. And so it should all work out for the best, and we'll be protesting at the Department of Education more than likely on Wednesday.
So if you could just give us an idea of the outline of Hillary's plan.
Sure. What the plan does, essentially, it spends about $350 billion. Some of it goes to the states, some of it goes to the schools, etc. But the point is to make community colleges essentially free and to reduce the amount of student loan debt that kids will have to take out to attend state-sponsored, state-funded colleges. And I mean, that's the meat of it. Other parts of the plan tout existing repayment and forgiveness programs.
So basically, you can get her idea would be that you can get an associate's degree for with the government paying for it, but after that, you're going to have to foot the bill.
Well, that's right. They allocate some money to go to the states, and there's sort of strings attached that say, you know, as long as the states put that money towards reducing undergraduate student debt, then they get the money. Otherwise, they don't get it. And so, and I mean, if you want to know my analysis of what we're seeing today, I have to say, and I'm a lifelong Democrat, but I am hugely disappointed. And it pains me to say that. But, you know, there are over 40 million people out in the country right now that are saddled with nearly $1.5 trillion in student loan debt. And I saw almost nothing in Hillary Clinton's plan that would do really anything.
Yeah, it was terrible. $17 a month.
Well, that's about what the savings would amount to. There's a refinancing plan that would allow some people with student loan debt to refinance their existing loans at a slightly lower interest rate.
And who are those
lifetime
people?
savings
And
of
is
these
it
plans are like a couple $1,000s. And when you're looking at the average undergraduate is leaving college today with about $35,000 in loans. It's not the interest rates that's the problem. It's the sticker price, and it's the amount of debt that's being saddled onto the backs of millions of our best, brightest, and finest citizens.
So, and when they have no purchasing power, our economy is just, going deeper and deeper into the red. If people can't afford to buy, I mean, who's going to be in business for very long?
This is a debt that we have never before had to face in this country. I mean, 10 years ago, in 2005, aggregate student loan debt stood at something like $350 billion. And that was a very significant amount then. In, say, 10 years prior to that, it was far less than $100 billion. In fact, it was probably about $50 billion. And so it has gone on an exponential inflationary tear that is absolutely not sustainable. And unfortunately, Clinton's plan does really nothing to bring down the actual price of college. And as I said before, it does nothing for almost nothing for the 40 million people that are trapped under this debt.
And 30 million of which are in serious trouble with their families, I would say.
Well, that's right. Here's the important part. Of the 40-plus million people that are out there in the country with this debt, nearly 3 out of 4, about 63% by my conservative estimates, are currently unable to pay on their loans. In other words, 63%, which is something like 26 million people, are either delinquent, in deferment, in hardship forbearance, or in default on their loans.
Mm-hmm. And I'd like to add here that Alan's very well known for his research.
Alan, I wanted to...
This comes from a 2011 study by the Institute for Higher Education Policy. I'd urge your listeners to see the data for themselves. And what the study did was followed nearly 2 million students leaving school in 2005, and they found that by 2010, only 5 years out of school, what I said, 63% were unable to pay. Now, in 2005, the economy was pretty good, right? And the amount of debt being put on the students was about a half of what it is today. Today, it's about $35,000. 2005, it was about $17,000.
I was in school then. That's when they stripped the protections, the last of them.
Also, I'm sure, as you're aware, the student loan debt for the elderly population, senior, not just senior citizens, but just anyone that's over the age of 50 has tripled in the last 10 years. So it's not just the younger generation, but it's everybody.
That is such a good point. I'm glad you mentioned it. And, this goes back essentially to, you could say the 70s, but really it was a fait accompli in 1998 with the reauthorization of the Higher Education Act. What they did was meaning Congress, removed standard bankruptcy protections from student loans, the only loans in this country to be vacated of standard bankruptcy protections. They also removed statutes of limitations. So the government and its contractors and Sallie Mae and Nelnet and all the rest can hound people for many multiples of what they originally borrowed until the grave. And we are seeing increasing stories of senior citizens literally losing their Social Security income
and disability
by an offset that goes to pay off loans that they took 40 or more years ago. And I mean, it just breaks my heart to read these stories. And I urge your listeners again, if you want to read stories from real people, senior citizens and others, come to studentloanjustice.org and click on the Victims tab and just read the stories for yourself. They are absolutely astounding and heartbreaking.
They are heartbreaking.
Well, as you mentioned, they can garnish your Social Security if it's federal loans, and they can also garnish your tax return, generally disability.
And disability.
And disability. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Everything. More than that, they can actually get you terminated from public employment. This can and other ills, other collection powers that, quite frankly, the mafia would blush to see. And in the words of Elizabeth Warren, they would make a mobster envious. It is a cruel and systemically predatory lending instrument. And so let me just go back. As I said, they removed bankruptcy, they removed statute of limitations, all these collection powers. Well, by 2004, the federal government was actually making money on defaulted loans. In fact, they were making more money on defaulted loans than on loans that remained in good stead. And this is an astounding comment. I mean, if you look at, for example, credit card companies, which are not great actors in the lending business, but credit card companies are thrilled if they get back 10 cents on the dollar for their defaulted accounts. Well, the federal government and its contractors are getting back more on defaults than they get for healthy loans. And that removes all of their incentive to provide even minimally adequate customer service.
Oh, their customer service is terrible. And they lie to you outwardly.
It's infamous. And the internet abounds with stories of just absolutely horrible examples of borrowers being given wrong information, of their payments being erroneously posted. In fact, Sally Mae, believe it or not, was caught in 2000 for literally defaulting loans without even attempting to contact the borrower.
Oh, I believe that.
And they
got rewarded with a larger government contract than the contract before for their.
Well, that's right, because the way it works, it's set up kind of like the home mortgage industry, where when a loan defaults, the lenders simply throw the loan over the wall and get paid full book value for that loan. And what is even more disturbing is for the big companies like Sallie Mae and others, they can come back and attempt to collect on that loan that is no longer however big it was when it defaulted, but it's double or even triple the size with penalties and collection fees and interest and so forth. So they get sort of a second bite of a much larger apple when the loan defaults. Now, I mean, just think about that for a minute. If somebody wanted to lend you money to start a business, but somehow you found out that actually they stood to make far more money on that loan if your business were to fail, would you want to borrow money from that person? I don't think so. Really. That wanted your loan to default, I don't think you would. I think I would tell them to get the what out of my face. Well, I mean, that is precisely what has been going on in the student loan industry for years. And to Hillary,
has.
Sorry?
It absolutely has. I mean, people have paid their principal back time and time again, usually with this as well, wouldn't you say?
I could go on literally for hours and days and maybe even weeks telling you stories of people who borrowed, say, $10,000, have repaid, say, $25,000 to date, but yet still owe $35,000 or more. That's actually a fairly common sort of repayment history that a lot of borrowers are facing. And, this is money extracted from very hardworking people. And they don't deserve to be financially ruined because of the fact that they went to college. It just makes no sense. And, to Hillary Clinton's credit, 10 years ago, she introduced Senate Bill 511, Student Borrower Bill of Rights. That was a pretty good bill. It recognized the problem and addressed it. They would have returned bankruptcy protections to student loans. They would have put maximum repayment caps over 10 and 15-year periods on the debt. They would have allowed free market refinancing of the loans, which is something, again, that just is unavailable to student loan borrowers. It was a good bill. And so to see what she came out with today,
it's very disappointing.
It makes me want to weep sometimes.
Alan, what are your thoughts on how on Hillary Clinton's proposed plan differs from what President Obama proposed recently? I think it was within the last year. He came out and said that junior colleges should be free. That seems to be pretty similar to what Hillary's saying now. Is there any distinction?
Well, no, to be quite honest, there's really not a whole lot of distinction, although Hillary has this added thing of essentially throwing money at the states with these carrots that would reduce undergraduate borrowing somewhat if the states, agreed to take the money. But other than that, it was essentially a rehash of what Obama has already put forward in some repayment programs that. And this is another topic I have to touch on. There are a couple of repayment programs, and Hillary Clinton's plan essentially just trots those out. But people need to realize there are two types of programs: IBR, income-based repayment, which ostensibly would forgive all the debt after 20 years repayment. There's also a public service loan forgiveness program, which would forgive the debt after 10 years of working for a nonprofit. But what people don't realize is that the Department of Education has no desire or intention of forgiving anybody's student loan debt. And so they are administering these programs much like credit card teases. The credit card says, hey, if you make on-time payments for a year, you get
Yeah, my IBR has been reset several times already.
Yeah, IBR started out at 25 years. Obama, to his credit, reduced it to 20 years. But here's the thing: the Department of Education is geared to kick as many people out of these programs as possible. So where, for these credit card teasers, for example, only about 15% of the people that try for these benefits actually get them, because during the year-long trial, maybe they were late on a payment, or a million reasons why they could be disqualified, and about 85% are. So too will the federal loan forgiveness programs be administered, and I would be surprised if more than 15% of the people that try out for that enter these programs will actually make it through to the end. And don't forget, interest accrues on loans while people are in these repayment programs. So the vast majority of these people will be booted out of these programs 5, 10, 15 years from now, and they'll be left owing far, far, far more than they owed when they entered. They'll be ruined.
So was my understanding that they could be actually kicked off these programs once they started making money?
Yeah, that's right. If they earn too much, for example, I just interviewed a nurse who made $65,000 one year, and she was booted out of the program.
And I just talked to an attorney that told me that wasn't true. It didn't reset it.
No, you have to reapply for these programs every year, and they do an earnings check.
Right.
And then you get kicked onto a standard repayment plan from an income-based plan.
So do you start at year one once you get out of that?
Yeah,
well,
that's
so
right.
once you're out of it doesn't count anymore, right?
Well, the Department of Education has a huge number of ways to kick people out of these programs, similar to the credit card companies. So number one, I should say, the Department of Education is only allowing a trickle of people into these programs in the first place. The last time I checked, there was something like only out of 40 million borrowers, there was far less than even 1 million that had been accepted.
Nobody knows about them. That's why these companies are springing up that are consolidating and putting people in these programs.
Yeah, but see, my point is that as long as the Department of Education is making money on defaults, it will have no interest in administering these programs fairly and working with the borrowers instead of against them.
Pretty amazing when you think about it. The Department of Education, which is a government agency, their purpose is to facilitate education of the public, and they're really deviating from that here when this is becoming a way to raise government revenue. I'm kind of curious, who's getting rich from this when the Department of Education is doing this, trying to put people in default and make money that way? It seems like somebody's got to be getting some big payoff.
Oh, there are a rat's nest of people inside and outside the Beltway that are making a ton of money, both on defaulted student loans and just healthy student loans. First of all, the collection industry is making a mad mint on this. Private banks who hold federal loans like Sallie Mae and Nelnet and others are making a tremendous amount of money on this. Most of the big guys, like who I just mentioned, own multiple collection companies.
Sallie Mae has several, and they're a bank
Nelnet,
now.
A quick story: Nelnet, for example, owns a collection subsidiary in Indianapolis, Indiana. This company actually has a 4,000-gallon shark tank in the lobby of their corporate headquarters. It's disgusting.
Unbelievable.
But you hit it right on the head. The Department of Education booked $41 billion in profits on the federal student loan program. I'm not sure if your listeners or many of your listeners are aware. Federal government essentially federalized, took over the lending program when Obama took office. So the private banks that were making the loans got booted out, and the federal government became the lender, where they make the interest and so on and so forth. So the federal government makes $41 billion in 2012, and it's probably about the same in ensuing years on this program. So, the Department of
So how do they spend that money? Do we even know?
Well, actually, honestly, a lot of that money was sort of promised. It was used as a way to pay for Obamacare, the health care program, what's it called? The Affordable Care Act.
Yes, the Affordable Care Act.
And that's kind of an accounting trick. They just had to make up the numbers somewhere, so they pointed to the federal student loan program. But the old lenders like Sallie Mae's and the Nelnets, they are still part of the game. They are now servicing all of these loans. In other words, they are both collecting payments from borrowers, regular on-time payments for the loans, and making a percentage. But they also still own student loan collection companies.
Several.
So the same sort of predatory dynamics that existed before the loan system was federalized, they still exist today. You still have servicers that have every interest to default loans rather than to work with the borrowers to keep the loans in good stead. And you still have a Department of Education that, quite frankly, they can make more money on defaults than on healthy loans in many, many cases. And so Obama didn't solve the problem. He just made it more lucrative for the federal government.
Yeah. Well, listen, we only have a few minutes left, Alan, so I want to take a couple minutes to let people know that if you want to know more about the stories, Alan's got a lot of great information on his site. Go to studentloanjustice.org. He also works on a very, very thin budget. He's on the street in Washington, passing around flyers and, marching on people. He has a GoFundMe. It's GoFundMe/PFOOSW. Those are O's, not zeros. That's GoFundMe.com/PFOOSW. And I encourage you to help him out because he is one of the few people that are actually in Washington pushing to make these things happen. Now, we have H.R. 449 we've been talking about.
Yes.
And we've been telling people to call Bob Goodlatte. Do you have another suggestion or what? There's also another one you have out there, 13-something.
Yeah, there's 1321 is a good bill, but I have to say H.R. 449 from John Delaney in Maryland is a great bill. And believe it or not, a Republican from
here in
Southern Florida, David Jolly, has co-sponsored this bill in a very courageous and unprecedented move. Even Hillary Clinton's bill of 10 years ago that I discussed earlier was a partisan bill. So it was Democrats' sponsorship down the line. Well, this bill has 11 sponsors currently. New bill has 11 sponsors currently. One is a Republican, and that is a great thing. I hope that this signals a sea change.
I hope so. So we need to call and encourage people
so I have to say, you guys are the pioneers on this, and I truly hope that you'll do everything that you can to affect your local legislators and certainly help us here at the federal level in D.C. as well.
Well, we'll work on that. Jeff, do you have questions or comments before we close up this evening?
I was just going to ask, by contrast, it seems like Bernie Sanders' platform is that he wants to have free public education throughout the country, and that he would provide this through a tax on hedge fund transactions and another Wall Street activity.
Sure.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think going forward, it's quite frankly probably a better plan than Hillary's. If I'm being honest. However, just like Hillary and Governor O'Malley's plan as well, none of these plans address the elephant in the living room, which is the 40 million people that are saddled with $1.5 trillion in student loan debt. And so I applaud the initiative. the only good plan that I've seen so far, besides Congressman Delaney's bill out of Maryland, 449, quite frankly, is the Green Party. They would actually forgive all outstanding student loan debt by putting a similar Wall Street sort of Robin Hood tax.
I think it's a great idea
In place. You know, I would love to see a combination of Bernie Sanders and the Green Party's propositions. But
yeah, well, progressives should just separate themselves from the Democratic Party and bring all those people under their little umbrella, and I think they could do some
and I
stuff.
have to tell you, Hillary Clinton is taking marching, and other Democrats in the field are taking marching orders from the Center for American Progress, and they have let down the progressives. I mean, they are taking money from Walmart, from Goldman Sachs.
Oh yeah,
and I'm a lifelong Democrat.
And Elizabeth
I swear to
Warren's
God.
taking from Citicorp now.
Citigroup, Wachovia, Wells Fargo, Bank of America,
The top
Blackstone
five,
Group,
the ones that own everything.
Grumman, who I actually worked for as a military contractor.
Did you
for
really?
A while. But you know, this is the Center for American Progress we're talking about, and in no way, shape, or form should they ever be taking money from the people I just mentioned.
No.
Well, you pay off both sides, and
Yeah,
then you
well,
can't lose.
that's right. They've got money in everybody's
here
pocket.
inside the Beltway, things get it's like bizarro world over here sometimes.
Yeah. Well, good luck on everything. I hope somebody will donate. Remember, GoFundMe.com/PFOOSW. Alan, I hope you'll come back and keep us posted on what's going on in Washington.
I would absolutely love to. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for being here.
It was a pleasure. Take care.
Take a walk on the wild side.
You have been listening to We Are the People with social advocate Tracy Marks, who every week bring to the light the needs and changes in our current system. Tune in every Monday night at 7 p.m. on WeAreThePeople.tv and participate in the conversation in the chat room or call 888-565-1470. Tune in next Monday for more information and facts and stay aware of your surroundings and challenges at all times.